My guest today is Jesse Lee Goodsell. She is as much as she doesn't like labels, I'm going to label her right here, a spiritual guide and an energy healer. And right now, where'd you say you were residing? Where do you live in the
I
country?
am in Oregon, in the northwestern part of the state. Yeah,
Rainforest area? Pacific Northwest
rainforest area.
rainforest?
It's I'm
Yes,
about an
beautiful.
hour and a half away from the coast, so I don't
Uh-huh.
get, pelted with all of that. But it's just this perfect place. We're just nestled at the in the foothills of the Cascades, and it's beautiful.
Gorgeous. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I say gorgeous because I see some of I guess I'll get into where I met you, we'll say, through TikToks. I know I've had some guests in the past that I've talked about that I met through TikTok, and I put out this sort of all call for anyone I explained what the podcast was about, and then anyone who thought they would be a good match for the show. I don't remember if that was how, if you contacted
Yeah.
me or I contacted you, but it's been great so far. Everybody who's contacted me is like that's exactly who should have been on the show. But so you're another one that I'd met through TikTok, and as I was talking with you earlier, I was drawn to you because I just resonated with it, with what you were doing, this really organic, it seemed like you had a calling to do something about a world that seems to be, well, like I said earlier, it's becoming a shit show, and people feel called to do something, whatever it was that's in their heart and their soul. It's time to be our authentic selves and not hang out in the shadows and be quiet. And it's time to put ourselves out there and be who we're meant to be in the world. And that's kind of what I felt like with you. Is that
Yeah.
accurate? Is that what's going on with
Oh
you?
yeah,
What
no,
is going on
yeah,
with you?
absolutely. And that's one of the reasons that I responded to your call out too, is because I resonated with that. I saw that
Yeah.
in you, like, there's this shift
Yes.
that, like you can feel it, like it's teetering. And yeah, the world is so chaotic, and it
Hmm.
was time to make a change. And um yeah, just kind of dove in and went on this roller coaster ride of spiritual awakening. And
Yeah.
you can't look back. Yeah.
Right. And let's talk about that. I am going to have you go back, and I want you can tell me the points of your life, everything that that you deem to be relevant up to here. But let's explain first. We said energetic healer and either spiritual guide, intuitive guide. What does that mean to someone who may not know an energetic healer?
Sure. So, an energetic healer is somebody who kind of works with the energies that are flowing through the human body and helps those um, move into alignment, um, so that you can feel more comfortable, so that energy can flow through you a little easier. Um, this is what I do. So a lot of people look at it and they're like, "Oh, like Reiki." And it is similar to Reiki. Reiki is a form of energy healing, and I think it's the one that most people, are most familiar with. At least they've heard that terminology. Um, and so it's similar to that. In meditation, my guides gave me, um, they actually showed me exactly how to work with people, and they showed me on myself. And so I focus uh, on your chakra systems. And so I will walk somebody through a little meditation to kind of get you calm, because this is never just me. I'm not the one doing the healing. I'm a facilitator of it, but you're also coming along with me, because you're just involved in your healing as anybody else is. So I walk people through that, and we'll start at your root chakra and kind of focus there, and I'll see how balanced it is. Maybe it's too big or too small, or not grounded enough. It's hard to explain how I see things, but with the help of my guides and your guides, they relay information to me. So all sorts of different things can come up. Sometimes nothing comes up, and it's just a very, to me, kind of simple, soft adjusting of the chakra. But a lot of times something will come up where it's like, your guides are saying, you need to get out in nature more, or you need to be writing more, or this is how you need to be grounded. Sometimes past lives come up. Sometimes it's a deceased loved one that may come through with a message. And everything that comes through, and I tell people this at the beginning too, like I will tell you what your guides, or, tell me to share with you. Whatever comes through, I'm going to share it with you. It might feel uncomfortable, but they're telling you because you're ready to hear it. And so in doing that, and you're getting all this information, and sometimes it's, uncomfortable stuff and sometimes it's happy stuff. But what's happening is your energy system is getting aligned. And so that way you are able to deal with everything that life throws at you all the time, whether it's something that's happening to you personally or whether it's everything that's happening out in the world, because we're getting energies from everywhere and we feel these energies. And so when we're out of alignment, those energies kind of get stuck. And that's where you might find yourself feeling cranky or anxious. And it's because you're not in alignment and there's some things that need to be released. And so going through the whole system, each one of your chakras, and kind of talking things through a little bit helps you to recognize where you're stuck, and it kind of helps that release itself slowly. It's not always what I found is so far, every single one of my clients that I've had has felt better afterwards, whether physically or mentally or both, and have just felt more aligned in doing that. And so, plus I'm also kind of teaching you how to do this for yourself along the way as
Yeah.
well. So, did that answer it?
Yes,
Long-winded.
yeah. And a question came up for me because this has been on my mind a lot. I'm a Reiki practitioner in the sense that I'm Reiki 1 certified. I don't, but when I do that, I don't feel anything. I couldn't tell anybody that anything was coming to me, and I'm not sure that they feel anything. And I'm not very well practiced at all. I practiced on plants and my family, and honestly, the most success I've had was a little sprout of a bean that was dying, and it did come back to life. Whether
Yeah,
it had to do with me or not, I
it
don't
did.
know. But I'm such a skeptic, and I feel like to the point that it holds me back because, or maybe my expectations are too much, but when you say things come to you, like their guides are, I'll just say talking to you or communicating with you, do you hear things? Do you see things? Are they just like thoughts that don't feel like your own thoughts? How do you perceive that you're receiving energy from something other than yourself?
Sure. So, I do have so I've got all the clairs. You've got your clairsentience, clairaudience. For whatever reason, I'm drawing a blank right now, but you have the ability to see, hear, smell, taste,
Yes.
um, to just
Clairvoyance
note clairvoyance.
and
Yep.
did you say claircognizance too? And
Claircognizance. Yep.
yeah, okay.
Um,
Can
so
I
for
pause? Can
me,
I?
sure.
I'm sorry, did you always have these abilities that were clear that you had abilities, or is this something you developed, or how'd you?
Um, I think when I was younger, I did. I didn't know exactly what they were, and from a very young age, I was told like, it was in my imagination. And so I just kind of let it go. And then it wasn't until about 4 years ago that I started taking a psychic development classes.
Okay.
And that's when my energy healing really kicked in. That's when I recognized that that was just a stronger suit for me. And all of my clairs kind of come in. So like when when I first started doing this, I thought there's no way that I could be psychic, because people see things. And to me, I thought they're going to see things just like you're going to see this pen, like you're going
Yeah.
to see it. And that's not how that works. I mean, sometimes, right? I don't know if you've ever seen an apparition like a ghost or a spirit, you know?
I've had experiences, but they were more. I have had visions, but they were eyes closed visions, and they were not where sometimes you'll see images. They're kind of maybe
Yeah.
you're borderline sleep or something. This was a sustained image of floating heads, basically, and one looked like it had drowned, one looked like it had burned, and I had no idea. I didn't even cross my mind, but I talked to my Reiki teacher, and he said, yeah, that whole floating head sort of imagery, he's like, those were spirits or what you'd say. And there was a certain energy about the experience that made me think this was something different. But that's really the
Yeah.
only thing I would call
Yeah.
that, yes.
So that is one way of seeing, and it's interesting that you said the floating heads because I've seen that. A lot of other people have seen that. They're not
Yeah.
always scary, you know,
Yeah.
but I for the longest time, especially when I first started, I would see like this reel of faces going in my
Yeah.
mind's eye, and it was like they were in sepia tone, and I
Hmm.
was like, they looked like they were from the past, but yeah, a lot of people experience that. As far as like seeing an apparition, like, so when I'm talking with spirit, I'm not going to see them like a ghost, like we see in the movies. And now
Yeah.
I have seen ghosts, what we think of as ghosts. I have seen that, but that's not how I see things now. um, I see things, sometimes they are like watching a screen, like we're doing now. And so it'll be a screen with blurs on the outside. And other times it will be like the image drops in like a memory. So typically, if you told me to picture a red apple, I'm not going to see a red apple like some people can. Like they will just see a clear image of a red apple. I'm more likely to go, okay, well, my brain's gonna go, well, I know what an apple looks like and I know what the color red is. And so, yeah, I know it's a red apple. So it's kind of hard to describe like how spirit drops things in because it's a bunch of different things. I do hear audibly, like you and I are talking. And then other times, it's like I'm replaying, not replaying, it's like you like remembering lyrics, remembering words. So thoughts that aren't mine will pop in. And then just because I have been working with energy so much just on my own and with other people, there are different energy points in my body that kind of light up that remind me of something. And then all of a sudden the story unfolds. And so, um, my life experiences are things that spirit uses to help me relate to other people, to know what's going on. So, for instance, I might say something like, I might all of a sudden get this thing like, "Hey, do you have a, you really like to ride your bike, right? Like you're really into cycling, but that's something that you haven't done for a while. Is that correct? Spirit's saying that you need to get back on the bike." And people will be like, "Oh my gosh, yes, I've just been going through this thing and I put my bike away for the last 2 months and I haven't been on it in forever and I haven't felt very good about that." So it's just different ways that they'll come in to show me things and get me to relay the message.
And
So
I
it's all
asked,
of the clairs.
yeah, and that I've always been curious about that because I do believe that everyone would have the ability, to varying degrees, like everybody has the ability to play the
Yeah,
piano, of course, but how much do you work on developing the skill? And
right.
I'm someone who, I don't know if I'm obsessed with working on the skill, but I'm like I want to I'm looking for connection to something. I don't even know what it is, and it feels like it's in the realm of those clairs. It's like I'm not a full version of myself. I feel like I need to be able to, like, my perception's cut off. And so I'm just at least very curious. And I'm like,
Mhm.
I wouldn't know if anything was coming to me or not because I don't, it's so easy to write off as my own thoughts. Because it's like I have received information before and I'm like, but that just felt like my own thoughts, but not really. So it's
Right.
like, does a person just have to learn that subtle discernment between,
Yeah, yeah. So a lot of what it is so taking the class, like taking classes, or you can do it on your own as well. We've got YouTubes and all sorts of stuff. But taking a class with somebody that you resonate with and then having the energy of other people to practice with, number one, I highly, highly recommend that. And then learning to trust yourself, just trust yourself. And
that's,
I love the classroom setting because everybody is just starting out, and you're not always going to get the information right, but you start to recognize what you feel like, what that information feels like when it is accurate versus when it's not. And we say the thing, I don't like to say this at all. It kind of irks me when people are like, "Oh, it's just your imagination." And I always say, but imagination is amazing. Imagination has created everything, right? Like it has created this. ability for us to be sitting here right now. Somebody
Yeah.
imagined this, somebody imagined sliced bread and tires and houses,
Yeah.
like, so imagination is amazing. So, um, and spirit plays with that. Life is supposed to be joyful, and discovering things is fun, right? And so when you're doing all this, you might get like a thought too that's like, that is absolutely insane. I am not going to say that. Why would I like, this can't possibly have anything to do with anything. And then but just say it, right? And somebody's like, oh my gosh, you would not believe, like, this just happened. And yeah, there was actually a polka dotted elephant that was left, on my front doorstep, like, it's just something absurd,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah, just practicing with all of that. And I think that energy work is is key in really getting in touch. I don't just think, I know that working with energy, whether you practice Reiki or, do what I do, but just understanding how energy flows through your body, is just so important into getting into all your clairs and recognizing your strengths, and being able to communicate with spirit in that way, because everything is energy, right?
Yeah.
Everything's energy.
Yeah.
And so that's how they're communicating. And once you start to recognize how that energy feels as it's flowing through your body, you start to pick up on more subtleties. That's when you can start to really communicate with your guides and know that you're communicating with your guides and you're getting a message from your guides, rather than thinking this is just a random thought that you're having. Not that we're not capable of having our own random thoughts, but they talk to us more often than we think.
Yeah.
And we disregard it because, again, like, we have to have this tangible proof. And so we're always, like, I believe in this, but I don't, because that's crazy, like,
Yeah.
so, um,
So,
yeah.
okay. Um, what was I gonna? Oh, there's another thing that comes up a lot too, and even it's crossed my mind. If you're opening yourself up to communicating with higher level energies, there's always the fear that you're going to open yourself up to something negative. How much of a concern should that be? I mean, if a person's intentions are good, is that enough to be
Yes.
safe, I guess? That's what it feels
Yes.
like. Okay.
So, everybody, lots of people have their different takes on this. I do not believe in, um, I guess, good and evil, right? I mean, I believe in things that feel better than other things that don't. Um, I believe in chaotic energy. Um, there is some energy that is so chaotic that, yeah, you want to label it evil, but and given what's happening in the world right now, it's very tempting to use that word often. However,
I was going to
uh,
bring this up and ask you something. Go ahead.
however, um, there can be stuck energy. So you can pick up stuff that doesn't feel good, right? But as far as an evil eye and being cursed and getting possessed by some demonic thing, I don't buy into all that. I have the only time I've ever felt anything remotely close to something like that, um, was early on. I had a teacher that got a little she got a lot into demons and hellholes and witches and satanic, all sorts of stuff, and I was like, this is crazy. But I was brand new, and so in the very beginning I was like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, there's hellholes all over the place and we don't even know it. Like,
What's a hellhole? Is this like a
no.
portal?
Apparently there's like, yeah, she's like, she was constantly like calling all these, meetings. We all needed to start doing stuff because there was portals to hell opening up all over the place underneath everybody's houses and stuff. And I was just like,
Uh-huh.
but there was people that was in my, that were in my group that had come to this because they weren't doing very well mentally and emotionally, and they were very susceptible to, you know brainwashing. That's what was
Yeah.
happening. And so they did experience really negative, scary things. But again, I believe it's an intention and knowing that you're safe. The way I look at it is the universe is constantly conspiring in our favor. And we may go through things that feel uncomfortable, but they are happening for a reason. And sometimes they're really uncomfortable and you don't know what the reason is right now, right? Like it might be a while, but I always try to take a look at that, like I have my moments where I get pissed off and I'm, feeling sad and I cry and all that kind of stuff, allow yourself to do that, let that move through you. But then I come out of it and like, okay, what good can come from this extremely uncomfortable situation, this extremely heavy, chaotic energy? What good can come from all of this? And then you look at it and go, okay, like the situation that we are in our country and the world, right? I think this is a really good time for us to all see where we have been um, lacking in being constructive parts of our society, like really
Yeah.
constructive parts of our society. And I look at that and say, this is when we can all start coming together and stop focusing so much on things that don't matter,
Yeah.
what really matters. And
And
yeah.
I, I guess with you, the reason I want to go back to the beginning and you to kind of tell your story as to how you got here, because I have met, and I know I'm one of them too, I've met a lot of people that feel like there's so much information anymore. You don't know, you can't know what's the truth anymore. And we've we're so cut off from our intuition, so much so that when I hear people, it used to be that I would hear, "Oh, listen to your heart, follow your heart." I'm like, I don't even know what that means. I don't know what it means. I don't know what that means. I mean, I can say it. I know when to use that phrase, but what do you mean follow your heart? Yeah, I have things that I like to do, but they always seem to fizzle out and I'm all over the place. And I'm like, I don't know how to listen to my intuition. I feel like, but I believe in intuition and I just feel cut off from that. And I feel like that's crucial to if we're going to turn things around in the world. And in what I mean by turn things around, it just feels like the direction we're headed, it just can't be sustained, especially in America where capitalism's rules and consumerism and the scientific materialistic viewpoint of the world that we're just physical things and get it while you can because what else is there to do? That's cut us off from this energetic, spiritual aspect of ourselves that if we don't get into that and don't get back to that, I don't think that things will turn. I don't think we can turn it around without that. So I do think there are a lot of people like who are like me that like I've heard all these phrases and expressions all my life, but I don't, if I'm being honest, I don't know exactly what they mean. And how am I going to develop those things? And what kind of person can become this type of person? Energetic healers or which really to me it's like,
Everybody.
right, this is just what it means to be a human being. Right now we have labels on them because they're unique and you're kind of you're set apart because you can do these things because so many people can't, but it should just be what human beings do. And I guess
Yeah.
before I have you go back and kind of tell your story, do you think that because you talk about energies being out of alignment and which I kind of visualize as we've just got this energetic mess going on. Has it throughout history just always been that way? Is just being a human being mean that you're going to have energy that's out of alignment? Because it seems throughout history that anytime we do have someone say Buddha or Jesus or any other spiritual leader, they're worshipped because they're so
Yeah.
different from the average human. It's like we've just always been a mess. Is it just always been that way, you think, with humanity, or are we in some sort of special time now where it's just even worse?
Yeah, I do think that it has probably always been that way. I mean,
Mhm.
maybe not always, and that's going to take me into a rabbit hole of, aliens and all sorts of other stuff.
I want to get to that, by the
Okay.
way.
But you know, I I wholeheartedly believe that organized religion has gotten us all out of alignment. Um, Religion has I think all religion is based in whatever religion. There's just so many. every religion, the basis of it, right, is be nice, don't be a dick, right? Like just
Yeah.
be a kind person, right? Like that's the end of it. That's what it's supposed to be. But people that have this desire to be powerful have used religion to hold and lord over people's heads, right? And if you don't do this and you don't do that, then you're going to go to this fiery hell, or some horrible, horrible thing will happen to you. And so they've taken that and they've turned it on us. But really, whatever God that any religion has been worshiping, they've taken what I call source, you know, and they've taken that and they've muddied it, and they have made everyone feel like Christ and Buddha and all that were out of reach, that they were
Yes.
special, you know, and they were. They had voices and they were speaking because they were the ones, they were us right now, right? Like, I mean, I'm not, I mean, I will compare, but I will compare it to a Jesus and a Buddha, like, we don't have massive followings, but I think that, we both were maybe not as enlightened, clearly as they are, but we are on that path of recognizing that we all come from the same source. And so
Yes.
religion has done that to people, and made them feel like they're not powerful, like you have to pray to this God to make everything happen for you so that you have a good life, so that you don't go to hell, when really your God is you. It's inside of you. That's where the power lies. um, and the real power is in love and compassion, and not gold, shiny things and big houses and fancy cars, and watching other people starve while you're eating a lobster. Like it's insane. We all have the ability to have these connections, and like you were saying, piano, right? Like some people are savants. You can sit a 3-year-old down at a piano and all of a sudden they sound like Beethoven, and it's,
Yeah.
meanwhile, if you put me in front of piano, I'll be there for 10 years and I might sound like I just started taking classes a week
Right.
ago, so
Yeah.
everybody's, we all have different strengths and natural talents, but we all have that connection. And so yeah, our energies have been chaotic because we've been fighting wars over stupid shit for
Hmm.
ever, for all of written history. That's what we've
Yeah.
been doing.
In literal senses and on smaller scales within ourselves, or political parties and ideologies, just all of it. It's
Yeah.
everything seems to be set up to keep people divided and to disempower the individual. Like you say with piano, it's like religion. If we're going to keep comparing it to this awakening is, or this enlightenment is playing the piano, it's like like you said, they've told you you can't even learn to play the piano. It's just not possible. You're not
Right.
one of the chosen ones that gets to. And I just I feel like that's changing. I do feel hopeful, very hopeful. And maybe it's because I only surround myself with conversations like this, and when you got social
Huh.
media, your algorithm, of course, is an echo chamber. I get that, but
Yeah.
I don't know what else to do other than just surround myself with that and stay focused on that. And that in itself seems to be a um, growing in popularity too. The whole what you focus on, and manifestation and law of attraction and vibration and things like that.
Right. Yeah.
How much of that, how much credence do you give to that kind of idea? Let's just talk,
I,
the law of manifestation and law of
I
reception and law.
100%, like absolutely 100%. There's no doubt about it. We do we do manifest our realities. Okay, maybe I shouldn't say 100%, because there are times when we have to face reality, right? Like
Hmm.
there's a lot of things that we can change about our circumstances, right? And sometimes you can remove yourself from certain things. But when there are big global things happening, you do have to recognize that these things are happening,
Yeah.
Like we have to be the light in the dark world, You have to, so I'm not going to tell you I have it all figured out, Jake. I'm not, because the last couple months and the last few weeks have been it's been rough, you
So it
know?
hasn't just been me. It's
No,
been that way
no,
here. It's
no,
not been a great last couple months. Specifically, that's
no.
funny that you say a couple months. It's
Yeah,
been a couple months.
it has not. I mean, you know, and in our in the realm of people that, you know, you and I surround ourselves with,
Mhm.
um, I know that myself and everybody else has been really kind of quiet for a while. Like they weren't sure what to do because we're supposed to be happy. And we're supposed to have positive thoughts and everything's supposed to be rainbows and sunshine all the time,
Mhm.
and it's going to be fine, and don't focus on anything that doesn't make you, you know, like, but that's not the reality. This
Yeah,
shit sucks. This is awful. You know, we're watching horrific things around the world, and now it's hitting home. And I think that, you know, for a lot of people that's even tougher because we can try to ignore what's happening in other countries, but now this stuff is coming to our backyards, and we're, you know, watching our neighbors be affected, and you know, different sects of people. As a woman, I'm looking at, you know, like, oh, am I going to be able to vote next year because my
yeah.
last name has changed, you know?
Uh-huh.
Like, you know, so it these are things that we can't ignore. But but we don't have to be hateful about it,
Yeah,
you know. And so yeah, I'm, you know, I'm still trying to navigate all that, but grounding yourself. And also I'm gonna speak up because I've had a loud voice my entire life, and I might as well use it, you know? Like if I
yeah,
see an injustice, I'm going to say something, you know, and that's just me. And I think the more of us that do that, again, like getting, you know, my whole business model, which seems so weird to even call it that, is about sharing stories, you know, me sharing my story and you sharing your story, and then us learning from that together
yeah,
and growing as people, as humans in that. And so when we speak out, we let other people know that they're not alone. You're not the only one that's feeling this, you know, and we are stronger together. And the more of us light workers come together, the brighter our light shines and the less dark there is in the world. And sometimes it seems like it's fucking impossible, you
yeah.
know, but we can't give up. And you keep going and you find the good and you learn the lessons, and you know, you try to
Mm.
lead by example as best you can. And you know,
Yeah.
this whole human thing is fucking hard.
Yeah, that's really what's gotten me. I've been sick the last couple months, but I find myself teetering into the what puts me in a hole is like instead of I know that I'm responsible for being here. I have absolute to me knowing that I chose to be here. I think we all chose to be here, of course,
Yeah.
and that everything is serving us, but I'm like I'm sick of this. And I don't think it all the time because in my 20s I spent 8 years with that thought constantly running. I don't want to be here. I resent it. I was a victim, and I don't feel that way anymore. But the last couple months have been enough to where it's like I can't go there. Basically, I'll have the thought, and
Yeah.
I'm like, you can't begin to go there. But you can't deny it either. I'm glad you brought that up because I get so sick of. I've heard it be called, toxic positivity because
Yeah.
it does. It starts to rub me that I'm just like, no, not now. Don't talk to me about that now.
Right. Yeah.
I get it, but yeah. So let's
You
do
gotta be
this.
pissed, get pissed off sometimes. Like it's
Well, you
okay.
need that contrast. You do. And you don't
Yeah.
need to be then feel guilty or mad at yourself for feeling mad, as though that's
No.
not part of what being a human is. It just my wife and I are both we're pretty much in lockstep. So we do a good job of holding space for the other when one of us falls off.
That's
And
good.
lately, we've got 3 kids. Everybody's been sick, and it's been a cold winter here in Illinois, and we're locked in the house sick. And I think honestly, overall, we've done a good job of holding an energy, holding a vibration that's
Yeah.
pretty positive considering everything. But yeah, I'm with you. I didn't have a loud voice my whole life. I don't know. I've told this story about every episode, but I just feel like it's relevant. I was someone who basically had this deep-seated idea. I don't deserve to be here. I'm not going to speak up. I know everybody else has their opinion and their point of view, but I'm not going to voice mine. I don't think anybody's going to care anyway, or I just wouldn't jump into life the way it seemed like so many others did. Of course, there's probably tons of people like me around me, but I just was able to notice the ones who were so far uh, away from where I was energetically, that everybody seemed so confident and so sure of themselves, and I never was. But I always had, I shouldn't say always, but later in life, I came across the belief that, it could be possible that all we have to do collectively is be focusing on, I guess, a certain outcome or identity idea, and the more people thought about it, the more chance it had, the more energy we'd build toward
Yes,
that. I don't.
absolutely.
Yeah, like, have you heard of the hundredth monkey phenomenon? It's a
I
scientific story.
Yeah, yeah.
It,
I can't
that's
remember how it all goes, but yeah, I've heard of it.
it's what really sold me on the podcast. That and my wife supporting me to do it. She's like, you need to be, because we talk about these things, and she talks about how, I get lit up about it anyway. But hearing that hundredth monkey phenomenon again, that they were studying these macaques off the coast of Japan on an island, and they noticed these macaque monkeys. One of them had learned to wash its sweet potato in the water in a stream or the ocean or something, and then they noticed other monkeys learned that behavior too on that island. So
Mhm.
obviously no big deal, but on a separate island with no connection to the other one at about the same time, those monkeys on that island started exhibiting the same behavior. And Rupert Sheldrake had already theorized about this idea of a morphic field, a transmorphogenic field that connects consciousness together. And what they were saying was, once they hit a certain threshold and a tipping point, that behavior and knowledge flooded into the morphic field of at least these monkeys. And I was thinking, that's what humanity, I think it's doing anyway. So I just wanted to be one more voice. That's why I called the podcast One
Yeah,
More Voice. And my voice, your voice, is just, let's at least talk about it. And in the meantime, I'm going to face my fear of at least speaking up, because it's like, well, who am I to have a podcast? Why would I deserve to be
imposter
listened to by
syndrome.
anyone?
Yeah, yeah,
Exactly, imposter
yeah.
syndrome, which I had to get over. So I'm like, if no one listens, but I still keep getting guests, at least I'm serving myself. And of course, if the guest agrees to it, then it must be doing something for them too. And I feel like
Absolutely.
the universe is efficient in that way. It never does it. I don't want to say kill, but kill 100 birds with one stone. It's going to
Yeah,
be so efficient. It's never going to just serve one thing when it can serve infinite amount of others too. So it's
right.
like I just had to believe in that, and that's what brought us here today. And
Yeah.
you were
Well,
kind
I'm
of
so
touching on
glad
that
that
a
you
bit.
did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
me too. I'm so glad that you're here. But what I had in mind for you, and now that we've gone about 40 minutes in, there was an old news segment. It was on, I think, NBC this morning, CBS this morning, something like that. And there was a guy called Steve Hartman, and he did a segment called Everybody Has a Story. And he would take a dart and throw it at the map, and it would hit a city, random city, and he'd go to that city. And back then they had phone booths and phone books. He'd go to a
Yeah.
random phone booth, open the book, hit his finger on the name, call the person, ask if they'd be willing to do an interview and share their life story. And if they did, well, it was always just an amazing story. It's like
Yeah, I bet.
everybody has a book in them if you could
Yeah.
write it down. And I'm like, that's what I kind of want to do with you here. Specifically, though, how it related to how you got to be such a unique thing as an energy healer and a guide. But what kind of life did you have to get up to there? So, do you
Oh,
want to kind of sum up your
how
whole
about,
life story in the next few
yeah. Oh
minutes?
my gosh. My life could go into a book. I've got
I'm sure.
a hint of ADHD, so I don't know how I would do that. But yeah, so let's see. I grew up in eastern Montana on a farm. I've got my mom's side of the family was Lutheran. My dad's side was Baptist minister. My dad did not like the religion at all. My grandfather, his dad was not not a good example of what the Christian faith should be, and so my dad kind of that just it made my dad a little angry, and and so he was an alcoholic and abusive, and he moved us all over the place, and that was scary as a kid, but that also turned me into um later in my teen years when everything was so chaotic and I couldn't handle things, I turned to drinking because I could get friends and also I could be super loud and it was okay to be a complete asshole, because I didn't realize it at the time, but I was
Right.
mirroring my
Right.
father. And that's kind of how I live my life. I don't think that I was always purposely, being a jerk. I mean, but I got pregnant twice as a teenager, two beautiful girls out of it, but so life was not easy. And um I think I drank most of my life. Gosh, I think I started drinking when I was like 12, maybe 11 or 12, and I didn't stop drinking. I mean, I didn't drink while I was pregnant, but other than that, I didn't stop drinking until 4 years ago. May 22nd of 2021 is when I quit drinking. And that was my husband at the time. He had a thing that happened. I'm not going to put all his dirty laundry, out there, but a thing happened, and I was like, "That's it. We're done drinking. Alcohol has like that's it. We're done." And he was done, and I was done. And it took me about 3 months to then recognize, like, oh, wow, my whole thought process is different now. Because in drinking all the time, I wasn't drinking every single day. I wasn't blacking out every single day, but I was drinking very often. And I did, throughout 30 years of life, my drinking went up and down. Sometimes I drank way more and sometimes I drank a little less. But you drink because somebody got a dog, and you drink because it's Tuesday, and you drink because the day was hard, and you drink because the day was great, and you drink and you drink and you drink and you drink and you drink. And so about 3 months of not drinking, I recognized that all of my thoughts that I'd had, all of these super strong opinions that I'd had, they didn't make sense anymore, you know? And
Okay.
so while I felt better, my body felt better, my head felt clearer, I was also kind of confused of like, who the hell am I now? Right? Because before, I just was Jesse, who was funny and loud, and and that's who I was. And I was Jesse that threw really great parties, and Jesse that was going to do this crazy thing. Like, that's what I was. I didn't really know who I was. So, in our family dynamics at the time, we just had a lot of crazy stuff going on. My younger daughter had some stuff going on, and it was really heavy. And I'm so grateful that I was sober to be able to deal with that. But I mean, like, all this stuff happened within 30 to 60 days. And in dealing with what was happening with my daughter, I started getting little signs that I can't even tell you exactly what they are right now, but I was just getting these signs from the universe that things were going to be okay. And that made me more curious about that. So I started listening to some podcasts because I was like, well, there's something like, why am I seeing these things? Why am I hearing, like, this message? Why this? Because I was, hearing voices, not like that were telling me to do anything crazy, and they weren't full on sentences, but I definitely was having some
And you were
psychic
hearing it,
yes,
like they
I
were
was,
coming from the out, like almost like
yeah,
you'd hear anything else.
yeah, like a whisper,
Okay.
or randomly a radio would turn on from out of the blue and play a very specific song, with very specific words. And I'm like, okay, that's weird. Uh, being in the backyard and all that, like, I remember one day though, I went in the backyard and I was just like talking to the universe, like, what the hell am I gonna do? And this buck walked right up to the back fence and stood and stared at me. And three robins came and sat inches away from this deer. And they stood in a line and they were just looking at me. And we're like, I don't know, a foot apart, maybe. So animals, I mean, I've always had a connection with animals, but the way that these animals just came to me, I thought there's something here. Um,
Did that mean anything to you specifically at that time, or just you were kind of getting a wink from source and
I was
nature that
just, yeah,
here?
I was getting a wink, you know, and of
Mhm.
course I went and looked up, like, what does it mean when it buck, you know, and what happened, you know, like these birds and, you know, looking at all these things. And of course, you know, like you look up angel numbers and they all mean like everything's going to be fine. Your guides are
We
supporting you.
joke
And
about
I'm
that,
like,
yeah,
I know, I'm like, no, I need specifics.
yeah. Yeah, my wife will get 555. She's like, look that up. What does it mean? I'm like, you know what it means. You're
Yeah.
supported. They're with you, and
Yeah.
but
I
we
know.
still, our kids will mention, Dad, I got 333 today. I still, I'm like, I'm choosing to, that
Oh,
means,
yeah.
you know what I
Yeah, no,
mean? Yeah, yeah.
I don't poo-poo it at all, you know,
No,
like if
I'm not
I'm,
thinking that you do.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, but if I have a moment and I see, you know, some angel numbers, I'm like, okay, thanks, you know, I'm like, yeah, you know, I got
that's
it, you know,
exactly the tone that I have too.
I don't look the numbers up anymore,
Yeah,
you know, I
right.
don't, because I'm
There's
like,
no point.
yeah, there's slightly different version of the same thing, you know, you're
Yeah,
not alone, you're supported, they've got your back.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, so, you know, I guess in a nutshell, my life had just been really crazy. I grew up with an alcoholic father, with a mother who did not stand up for herself or her children,
Mm.
and I took that and became this chaotic version of a person. And um, I I wasn't always good to myself. I wasn't always good to other people. I made some really shitty decisions, you know? And I'm not saying that I don't. Like sometimes I still make bad decisions, but there are fewer, you know, much fewer. And I have a mind that's clear, and I have a connection with source that I'm able to work through that, you know, and do that shadow work. Why did I behave that way? You know, what made me feel this certain way that you know, I made that decision. Or sometimes, like, I was meant to make that decision because shit was supposed to fall apart, you know? It was supposed to feel uncomfortable and awful, and, you know, and now I got to give myself grace and help everybody else that might have been affected by that decision through that best as I can, you know?
So did you feel, even though you were drinking, did you always have what you consider to be a connection to source? Because you'd said it was only 4 years ago, and then all of a sudden you started to hear things and get little God winks and things like that. But that in itself would be something that you'd have to wake up to the idea that could even be a possibility. You know what I mean? So did you already have connection, or that you just kind of
Yeah.
pushed into the background?
So when I was very little, I do know that I would see spirit. Um, And now I don't remember all of those moments. For me, like now it's just little bits. But my mother has told me that I used to, you know, wake up and tell her there was a man in the corner of the room, or, you know, things like that. And I think I see what she's saying now, because my granddaughter would have the same thing when she was very little. She would see spirit. But then of course, you know, when you're raised in a family that doesn't believe in all this kind of stuff, it's, you know, it's a figment of your imagination. It's not real. Go back to sleep, kind of a thing. And then when I do remember, I don't know, probably from the age of 7 or 8 until I was in my late teens, you know, after I'd already been a mom, I would have prophetic dreams, um, that I never really talked to anybody about, and they were never anything huge. It always had something to do with my life, you know. But I would know that things were going to happen because you know, like I just had a dream about that last night, and then just, you know, the next day I'm like watching a scene unfold because
Uh-huh.
you know, I had this vivid dream of that. Um, I have I have heard spirit. Um, but again, it's never it dawned on me after I started taking these psychic development classes that like that's been happening to me for my entire life, that I never really talked to anybody else about it because it was just like, well, this happens to everybody. You know? Like it's
Yeah.
been so much a part of me, just like blinking and breathing and everything else, that I've never, I don't know, it's never been a thing for me to wonder about because it's just
Yeah.
always been there, you know. Now, if I really wish they'd tell me like the winning lottery numbers sometimes, but you know, very rarely is it anything. It's interesting because very rarely when they talk to me, when I hear the voice, is it something super intense, like a life-saving situation. I keep them busy, man. Oh man, I have kept them busy. But
Busy looking out for you, or what
yeah,
do you
oh
think?
yeah, I'm sure there's a million reasons that I should not be on this planet right now.
Mhm.
Like there's just, I know that I have kept them busy. But I remember once, it was a long time ago, I had done something that was not quite legal, and I was getting myself out of the situation in the best way that I possibly could without going to jail. And in doing that, I was walking down this road, and the snow was falling, and I was like, but it was a beautiful day anyway. It was a beautiful day, and I was out in the middle of nowhere, and I said to, just to the ethers, and I was like, this is really beautiful, but maybe you could get it to like stop snowing so much. I wasn't really expecting this. I'm not dressed for this. And I heard this voice, clear as day, as a male's voice, said, but the snow is covering up the tracks. And I went, oh, okay. You know,
Okay.
and I'm not, it was nothing like murderous. Nobody would like, was, like it's, everybody was fine, but
Yeah.
it wasn't exactly on the up and up, a long,
Uh-huh.
long time ago. But it's things like that where I'm like, they'll pop in and be like, "Hey, don't worry about this. This is, this is
Mhm.
this is how it's going to work out for you." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." You know, and so that's the thing too. Like I was thinking about, everybody's like, "Oh, good and evil." Man, this like we're here playing these parts, right? Like
Yeah.
you are me and I am you. You know, we're just little, we just fragmented off of each other, and you're wearing that suit and I'm wearing this suit. And so things happen, and we try to make it the most enjoyable experience that we can while we're here. But there is no like good and bad so much, like not the way that we think about it,
Yeah.
like we have these experiences, we learn from them, and, we grow from them. And so, yeah, things like that, like me breaking a law a long time ago, I don't be like, oh my gosh, what's going to
Right.
happen to my soul? I
Oh
don't I
yeah,
don't worry about
exactly.
it,
Yeah.
you know.
And that's was
And
been explained by a guest recently that she called that in what's related to that is what she called radical acceptance, and that's just not looking at rising above that whole illusion that things can be good or bad, right and wrong, and things are as they are. And that, because I'd asked her, I'm like, what do you mean by choosing joy or choosing love? Because she was talking about that, and she kind of explained it the way that you're just talking there. Um, Not looking, you could look at it either way, and you don't have to look at it either way. You can be above
right.
that binary choice you have and accept things as they are. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm with you on that one.
Yeah.
But
So I
so
don't I don't
that
know if I went on a tangent there, but there's my life.
okay. So then when people come to you as whether you're guiding them or healing them, what are the some of the major reasons that they would seek you out, and what's going on in their lives that they feel that you can help them fix?
I think most of the people that I have spoken with, that I've seen, um, let's say the majority of them was like dealing with religious trauma. And by religious
Oh,
trauma, I mean them they've come to this point where they recognize that this religion they were fed their entire lives is not something that they believe in anymore, and there's a much bigger picture, and God is a much, is different than what they were taught. And so even though they know that, the idea of leaving their religion um is still scary, because you still do have that fear of going to hell, and then you worry about what your family's going to think, and they're going to think that you worship the devil and that you're some sort of crazy witch, and these things. And so a lot of it is that, and people trying to find themselves, because for a lot of the people, their religion becomes their identity. And when things have gone wrong, what do? You pray to God. God's going to fix it.
Yeah.
And when you don't have that framework anymore, when you take that framework apart, they've got to build something back. And so I think that's a lot of what people come to me for. So that's why I call myself I don't call myself like a life coach, it's I like the spiritual guide, because I'm just here to help guide you through this. I'm not going to ever tell somebody what to do, but I'm going to help guide them through that,
Yeah.
help relay the messages to them that they need to hear right now, and then assist them on the next phase of that journey, and um, it's really beautiful to watch. Actually, it's like
I bet.
like it's partly, it's heartbreaking because I do feel people's pain. I'm a huge empath, so I feel their emotional pain very, very, very heavily. But it's also beautiful to watch people grow and really learn to love themselves and find the God source in them, and then they start sharing their light with other people, and it's a beautiful thing.
That's thank you for doing that, because that's exactly what I like. That's what people need to be doing. It's got to be passed on. As small as we can think that we are, the ripple effects we can't imagine. We can't imagine. So
Yeah,
thank you for
yeah,
being a
it's
force,
huge.
because we
Oh,
need a
thank you.
force.
Yeah,
Um, and I met
you
you.
should. We should have a session. Yeah,
How do we do that? You mean
yeah,
you do it remotely?
yeah.
Is
That's
that
how
what
I
you
do
mean?
it. Yeah,
Okay,
we're
okay.
just energy. We're just energy.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
yeah, that's what happened on the last one.
yeah.
So what would it be if we did? Can we do a session now? Or is it
Oh
something that
gosh.
takes quite a bit of time?
Um. Well, I've never done one on the. It does take a little bit of time.
Okay.
Like a full session is about an hour.
Yeah.
I've never done one on the fly like that.
Well, I
But
won't put you on the spot
yeah,
anyway and try to just
I
hijack the
you
interview and
try to
try to
like make me
get
talk to
it.
your dead grandpa or
Yeah.
something. I'm not
Yes,
like
yes.
sometimes that happens, but I don't
I
advertise that because I'm.
My grandma is who when I pray and when I visualize my guides, it's my grandma. So I'm that's the face I put on my guide. But what was I
Nice.
what was I going to ask you? It sounds like you're a reorienter, really. It's like, hey, yeah, you're kind of lost now. And you're taking them and like, this is a way in which you can go. Look over here, and this is, in terms of this is what you are, and this is what God could be considered to be, and like, helping them redefine things and reorient people towards something that would serve their highest good.
Yeah, I guess I hadn't
That
really
type of
thought
thing.
of it like that, but yeah, that makes sense because
Mhm.
there's also a lot of this forgiveness, right?
Yeah,
Everybody.
big one.
I have not talked to one person, not one person who doesn't hold themselves accountable in a way, over something
Right,
that they
right.
hold heavy, right?
Mhm.
We all do that. And it's a work in progress, it's a practice. But yeah, so it's like, yeah, reorienting themselves,
Yeah.
helping people see that. Because you have you have to forgive yourself. This is what I would say. We are all doing the very best we can with the tools that we have, right? And sometimes our very best looks horrible. It's a hot
Yeah.
mess, right? but but we're doing the very best with the tools we have. And somebody can give you a tool also, but if they don't teach you how to use it, it's not going to do you any good, right? So that's what I hope to do is help people understand that yeah, that moment, the decision you made, that whatever happened, it was it was messy looking and it was uncomfortable, but in that moment you were doing the very best that you knew how to do. you know I
Yeah.
don't think I think there's very, very, very few of us that wake up and say, today I am going to make everyone around me suffer. Like
Yeah.
I don't think that's an intentional thought for the vast majority of us. Um and yeah, we're doing we're just doing the best we can. So
And
we gotta give ourselves grace. This
yeah,
human experience, like I said, I keep saying this, it's really, really hard. And you don't know, we don't know how we're gonna react in the situation. And so we can't be hard on other people like that either. Like we don't have to be happy with things that happen, but understand that even people we disagree with who maybe make choices that even affect you, they are doing the very best that they
yes,
know how to do with the tools that they have. And so that's part of our job, right? Is to provide people with additional tools so
yeah.
that
Okay.
maybe life can feel a little better for them and everybody around them moving forward, you know.
Do you ever use plant medicines in your services, or is it always remotely that you're working?
Um, it is always, it has been remotely. I do envision sometime in the future having an um, in-person services that will probably be more of a group setting, um, potentially one-on-one, where there would be plant medicines. I personally use plant medicines for my own personal journeys and exploration when I feel called to it. But and I definitely will talk with other people who are um, interested in doing that, and maybe have never used plant medicines, and I will talk with them if they have any questions, and kind of guide them to maybe some different resources, and how to keep themselves safe and things like that, and get the best experience out of that, and also like determine, is right now the right time for you to do this,
Yeah.
because that's the answer is not always yes.
Right, right. It's a person needs to be called to that. And I don't know specifically which plant medicines you're speaking to, but when it comes to say mushrooms or ayahuasca, or you know what, even depending on the person and the strain, marijuana can be something that can get out of hand, I guess, and
Yeah,
spiral into a severe anxiety.
yeah,
So even that needs, I feel like if a person's going to do that, if you're not coming at it with reverence, you could be asking for something that you don't
right,
want.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
But
I use psilocybin is
mhm,
the my medicine of choice. I have tried just a couple others, but not enough to get an experience that I would think that I would, go back to it. But psilocybin has just, it's something that spoke to me. Ayahuasca, I would love to have the opportunity to do that. It just has not presented itself to me in a way that's been feasible. But I'm totally open to that. And marijuana, I used to, you know, as a younger person, I smoked all the time, way too
mhm,
much. And then I had kids and my body changed and I just could not anymore. And
yeah,
now I call myself a half hit wonder because I just can't function. I just
right,
purely can't function. But I have not done it with the intention of ceremony, you
yeah,
know? So but it's been on my mind actually a lot lately. So maybe this is a sign.
yeah. Maybe. I mean, that's how I almost can never do it. I have kids, and it always comes up. What if I'm going to have to deal with something? I need my wits about me because I get, like I said, it doesn't take me to where it used to take me. In my 20s
Yeah.
and teens, it was, as much as I wanted. And
Yeah.
there was never anxiety. I used to laugh at one of my friends. He'd be checking his pulse and he'd be having panic attacks. I'm like, are you for real? You really feel that way? And like, now I'm like, I was an asshole for laughing because that's exactly where I would go.
Yeah.
Unless, like you said, it was not even a half it wonder. I just let it touch me and blow it out, and I will feel it. But to sit and get quiet if there's time and I have nothing I have to do, especially if it was to be multitasking, then that'd be a good space for me, a ceremonial space. But that just doesn't happen for me at the
Yeah.
moment. But
It's
I do.
it's hard.
That changed my mind. I did have the opportunity to go to an ayahuasca ceremony, and the just that talking about coming to even because cannabis was offered as part of the integration ceremony, because after the ayahuasca ceremony later the next morning we would get together in a group and we would integrate our experiences and talk about it, and that was extremely helpful to hear someone else talk about their experiences in terms of how it helped you understand your own. But he would ask you if you wanted cannabis, and it was, it was a hit. I'm like, I don't even want it here. I
Yeah.
couldn't have better space, but I'm like, no, because it scared me. But it did change my mind about it. Because there was another plant called rapé. Have you heard of rapé?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's called hape, but it was presented as the masculine counterpart to the feminine ayahuasca spirit. They would call grandmother ayahuasca, but hape is very grounding, extremely grounding. So it would kind of the facilitator talked about a daily routine he had in which he took a minimal amount of cannabis and he would balance that out with rapé, and it would balance it out. And that was his morning meditation. He's like, you don't have to do this. This is just my thing. And so that's kind of what brought me back to it. I'm like, okay, I'm going to try it that way, and I'm going to do it. I do use the rapé because you don't get high off rapé. In fact, it's uncomfortable. Have you used rapé?
No, I had the opportunity to, but I, I don't try to be a germaphobe, but there's certain things that I just am not, So it was with a bunch of people who are all very nice. I don't know any of them, and there's a
Yep.
dozen of them, and I'm like, I'm just
Yeah.
not comfortable putting the same thing in my nose. I'm
Right.
just,
And you
so
can
I
get a
didn't.
self-administering, I think
Right.
it's called a curipe. And but I liked that it
I
was first
digress.
done ceremony. Yeah. But it I think has been very useful to me. And it's not every day, but most days, at least once a day, I'll use rapé, and it's 10 minutes, maybe 12 minutes of effect. But it's a very uncomfortable burning, but a
That's
total
what I
cleanse
hear.
of your sinuses, and a lot of times there will be a belch that comes up and a neck pop. And I've had that explained to me as part of the purge. It does help purge just
Yeah.
certain subtle energies, but then through, in general in my life, I do feel more grounded, but definitely in that 10 to 15-minute window where it's in your system, the discomfort, it's not like it's terrible, but it's enough to where you're centered in it. You're sitting in that discomfort. But it's been very valuable. And even
Does
that,
it does it make you like in that 10-15 minutes, do you feel like you're intentionally grounding yourself, like you're intentionally meditating, or you're just like riding through the uncomfortable feeling?
well, it's both. It's a great synergy because it will. Now you need to be able to also sit in silence. You can't have your kids needs be there, but it will put you into that, what I considered, I'd have to sit for 20 minutes in meditation to get into this quiet space. Once you get that in you, you're immediately there. Now you're spitting it out because the tobacco is in your sinuses, and you don't want to immediately blow it out of your nose, but your eyes will be watering, your nose will be running. You need to kind of be breathing in a manner where you're pulling it up and keeping it in because it'll want to run out, and then it's coming down the back of your throat. So it's pretty nasty. You're hawking it out.
Yeah.
I'm making it sound terrible, but it's just
You
part of the
are.
process.
You're making it sound absolutely awful.
You don't want to swallow it. You don't want to swallow that energy that you're supposed to be purging. So
Right.
it's a purge. It's a little mini
Yeah.
purge. But to, no, you don't have to make yourself feel grounded. You're grounded, but that part there, it's not like you can just sit there quietly, like, with marijuana, you take a hit and you can sit, everything's fine. But this, you have to be cleansing it out. But that doesn't last the whole 15 minutes. I mean, it's a reaction that you have. And honestly, after I'd say a minute, that intense discomfort's gone, and you're sitting in that kind of afterglow of dealing with the pain. I don't know if you have any
Yeah.
tattoos, but
Yep.
when the tattoo he gives you a break, there's a little endorphin hit because you went through the pain. It's a nice contrast. So that's the one plant medicine that I use consistently, and you don't get high. In fact, you go the opposite. You get centered. I need to be centered and grounded. So, but that's part of the
Interesting.
ayahuasca ceremony. So if you
Yeah.
get the opportunity, it's probably going to come up. I hope I didn't scare you off from the
No, no,
rapé.
no. I mean, I no
Um,
ayahuasca. The idea of ayahuasca terrified me for the longest time. So I was like, that sounds horrible. I do
there
not
was,
want to do that. But now I look at it, and I mean, I get it because I have had moments with psilocybin where I have purged, and I've
yeah,
had Gaia come to me and tell me, like this is what's happening, and this is why, and here's what's coming up, and it's been a huge teacher. So it doesn't scare me.
yeah.
And these medicines are, you know, the universe gave us these
I
medicines
know that's what's so
for a
weird. I
reason.
mean, that it
Like,
that it does specifically speak to such a deep part of you. Why should it do that? I mean, that can't be some random mistake.
No.
And I think we have receptors to receive these tryptamines or whatever
Yeah.
molecule. I know DMT is a tryptamine, and I think psilocybin has something very closely related.
Yep.
And we specifically have receptors that hold these molecules, like we evolved
Yes.
along with it or something. So,
Yeah. Well, we
yeah,
did. Yeah. It's absolutely amazing. It's like Mother Nature gave us this key
yeah,
that we can access to gain a bigger perspective, and to remember where we come from.
yeah.
And, clearly it's not something we can do all day long, like I've heard this thing, well, mushrooms needed to be illegal because people would do them all the time. No, you won't. You will not.
No, yeah,
I
none of them.
No, yeah, like I can't imagine. Now, I've never done ayahuasca. I've just heard lots and lots of stories, but I have, used psilocybin several times, and I've had some extremely beautiful experiences. But I will promise anyone who has never done it to think that this is an addictive
Yeah,
thing.
no.
No, I
Even
no.
even when it's good, there's to me, even when it's a good experience, there's discomfort in it. There's a
Yeah,
certain, I don't know, it's like a heaviness to it for me that I'm like, okay, give me a few months or a few years and maybe I'll
yeah.
come back to that. But
Yeah, I
I was
get I
gonna,
get cold, I get tired, I
yeah,
get, sometimes I get nauseous, and then you can't go to sleep no matter how
yeah,
much you
oh
want
yeah.
to. You're like on the ride. So yeah, anyhow.
So I was gonna ask you though, in general, what do you think you've gained from your experience with psilocybin, and like what has it taught you or shown you?
Oh my gosh, the mushrooms have taught me so much. I think initially, um, it showed me that gave me proof that we are not the only ones here. Like that humans and this earth are not the only intelligent life, even though we don't act very intelligent, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
That we're not alone. And it showed me the interconnectedness of everything. And that there are so many things that the universe is showing us all the time, but we are too busy with everything else to notice it. So, for instance, the first time I did mushrooms was very intentional. Well, okay, I've done mushrooms as a younger person, hated it every time, made me anxious. I did not like it whatsoever. And then decades go by, and I, realized like I want to do this. So it was very much with intention, and I had no idea what to expect, but I did know that I could feel anxiety, right? I could feel all sorts of things, but that I had taken a medicine and that I would be fine. And the geometric patterns that I saw were beautiful and amazing, right? And I kind of thought that like that was the only time I was going to see that, because every journey is different. Like, except that every single time that I have journeyed with psilocybin, I have seen the same geometric patterns. And there's something to that, you know? There is something to that. That to me is a truth, you know, when the same thing I see these things over and over again, and it's not just me, other people see them as well, so
yes.
knowing when we can compare these experiences, that to me that's where the truth comes in. So there's that. And um and the mushrooms they've taught me forgiveness, I think. Yeah. They've taught me how to
Yourself, of
forgive
others,
both.
everything.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. That doesn't mean that I always jump to forgiveness right away.
Right.
I try, but I am able to look at situations from a different perspective, step out of the ego and look at things from a different perspective. And that's been very, very helpful. Um, it makes me feel very much at peace. And I feel so connected with Gaia when I am using psilocybin. as this, as the medicine that it's meant to be. I feel so connected with Gaia and source energy and my guides, and I've learned so much. It's when I communicate with the trees and they teach me things, and and it's all things that we can apply to this human existence we have, and attempt to be better versions of ourselves. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's
I
beautiful.
always love to hear people. I never intended for this show to be so, well, almost every episode we've come to plant medicine to where my friends tease me about it. But that's just, I've never had a greater teacher. I've never had anything else throw me into an experience of connection, because I said that's what I feel like is missing in my life is connection. That's what, for anybody who wants to scoff at the idea of mushrooms and think that, oh, you're just getting high or whatever. Well, you obviously don't never done it and you don't really know what you're talking about, but that can't be denied, that connection with Gaia that you're talking about, and this concept of forgiveness that comes up. I had an experience with, and these are some that I grew myself, but I remember at one moment, and this was probably not my own thought, and it came from the outside, that it said to me specifically, "Of course you're forgiven." And I don't even know where that came from. I didn't even feel like I needed forgiveness, but it came to me in that tone. You're forgiven. Of course you're forgiven. I mean, it's not even you're so forgiven that there's nothing to forgive.
Yeah.
You like to use the word forgive, so of course you're forgiven. Nothing's you're exactly where you're supposed to be, doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing, and it's just such a strange thing to come from a mushroom, from eating these mushrooms, these
Yeah.
types of experiences that can't be denied. And the only people who want to deny it either have an agenda or they just, they're scared of them and don't know what they're talking about. But yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. And I used to be like that. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so bad. You'll do that and they'll make you go crazy, because I'm Gen X, right? Like I grew up with Dare and the cops coming
yeah,
in with the
yeah,
little thing of all the different drugs and this is gonna fry your brain and all that kind of stuff. And I got over it, I did my homework. That's the thing. Like I wish people do your homework, like
yeah.
research some things, before we jump to conclusions about everything. Just do a little bit of research and see, what's really going on there, because the healing that comes from plants, and I will like speak to specifically to the psilocybin because that's where I have my experience is there's nothing like it. Like I don't think I've had a better teacher. Or one of my better teachers anyhow.
Yeah.
People have taught me a lot, but yeah, it's just absolutely beautiful. I don't think I'd be as far along in my journey as I am now without the guidance that I've received from mushrooms. And, let me also say that it has been, oh gosh, it's been over a year and a half since I've, you know, had, done any psychedelics. So this isn't something that, I do all the time. I don't have to be on mushrooms all the time to feel a connection, but when they call, they call, and
Yeah.
you make the
And it,
space for it.
yeah. A person, that's for the people who may be listening and still scoffing at it. That's just the thing. There, you can process these things for years, or at least, like you can have an experience on them that you can refer back to, basically, like that
Yeah,
space where you were forgiving yourself and others, and it's like, yeah, I can drum up that feeling again because I actually had it for once while I was using mushrooms, and I just kind of refer back to that, like go to where you were in that space where everything was right and you were forgiven and you didn't
yeah.
have to worry so much about things, and just you were here and you were present, and it's kind of a nice reference point for later, and you can ride that out for, well, indefinitely if a
So
person
do
wanted
you
to.
find, because I find sometimes that when I feel like, sometimes I'll have a thought like, oh man, I really wish I could, do a little mushroom journey because there's some things I want to work out, but life
Uh-huh.
happens, you don't have the time for
Yeah.
it. Sometimes I feel like the mushrooms just come to me anyhow. Not in full effect, but like
Uh-huh.
I feel like her energy comes and sits with me and it's like, okay, let's, and I
Yes.
kind of get that perspective. So I was curious if that was the
Yeah.
same for you and
Yes,
with
that's
ayahuasca
exactly
as
it.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, absolutely. With ayahuasca, it's too much to explain, but in general, the experience, because ayahuasca came to me in cliches. And I did not have, if you watch documentaries on ayahuasca and things like that, and people talk about these profound psychedelic visual experiences or deep connections with nature, I didn't have any of that. I did feel the influence of it, but it was almost like I don't even know if it was, say, the medicine talking to me or if it was able to allow me to hear the voice of my higher self more clearly because it did seem to shut off my internal dialogue completely. And that's enough. That's such a
Yeah.
rare perspective for a person that's psychedelic in itself.
Yeah.
And I purged. This was a 3 night ceremony, and I vomited for hours, off and on. It's not like you're sitting there vomiting, but it's
Yeah.
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there and noticed that my breathing was like the breathing of a dying animal. Um, and I hadn't been thinking. I'd probably been breathing that way for an hour. I don't know, but I just happened to notice it. And that's when it kind of said to me, all you have to do is breathe. All you ever have to do is breathe. No matter how uncomfortable you are in life, whatever's going on,
Mm.
all you have to do is breathe. Just breathe. And I talked about it with the facilitator. I've interviewed him. And I'm like, it's so cliche and so trite and almost triggering to people like of course you hippie. Yeah, just breathe. Put it on a bumper sticker. But it hits in a different way.
It,
It hits you in a way where you feel the truth of it. And that's what it did give me. It gave me the ability to feel the truth of these cliche things that everybody says that you've heard your whole life, but you're like, oh yeah, really? It's the
yeah.
truth. And that also what it meant to sit in discomfort and know that even when life gets uncomfortable, it's going to pass. It's going to pass. And it's okay you can sit in discomfort and be calm at the same time and be uncomfortable. It's okay to be uncomfortable, which sounds, yeah, wank, wank, but it hit me there. And all I have to do is think of that ceremony and I'm right back into it. I
Uh,
felt the truth in it so deeply. And this is what the facilitator called a light brew. He's like, this mix was just light. And I know you're all wanting to really blast off into the cosmos, but it's like you got what you were supposed to get
yeah.
tonight. And even then I'd be like, well, yeah, that's of course that's what you say, but everybody felt that.
Yeah.
Everybody intuitively felt, yeah, this is because
Yeah.
that group, if you get a chance, and I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you some information after this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, it's absolutely worth it, especially if you feel called to do it. Just for the synergy you get in your group, the integration
Mhm.
it was my favorite part. Of course, then because you're no longer puking, and
Right.
it's not it's coming out both ends.
Everything's
Never,
beautiful
never,
after that.
yeah, and that was the other thing. It was like the rapé. It was like because I went through such discomfort, now just not being sick was just the greatest feeling in the world. And it's also a cleanse. I mean, there's a diet that you do beforehand, so you're
Yeah.
already pretty clean. But that's what doesn't get emphasized enough. It's a physical purge. It's a cleanse. There's nothing left
Yeah.
in you. And yeah, there's food offered at ceremony, but you don't really feel that hungry. So you're
Right.
just
Yeah.
empty, and that feels good. You're light, you're empty, you're clear. But talking about it, maybe it being addictive, we had 3 ceremonies, and the third ceremony was a daytime ceremony, and I mistakenly thought that it was going to be the third morning. Well, the second ceremony was at night, and I'm like, I'm not doing the third. I can't do this again. Me and another lady, we were plotting our escape from the retreat. We're like, I'm leaving tomorrow. So, and I had called my wife and I'm like, I'm never doing this again. I was like, I fucked around and found out. I wanted to know and now I know. And I'm like, I'm never doing it again. Well, a few days later, I was already ready to go back. Twice I've tried to reschedule, but my kids have things, a graduation,
Yeah.
birthday party. It just hasn't worked out. And I tried to force it. I'm like, I'm not missing a family thing for this, but
Yeah.
it was, like childbirth's got to be uncomfortable. I mean, I've never had a kid, but people do it again,
Yeah.
and they're probably not screaming, I want to do this again immediately, but lots of women, they want to get right back into it. So
Yeah.
yeah, that it's not just because it's uncomfortable doesn't mean it's regrettable. I'm ready to go back
Right.
as soon as I can.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. I feel the same way with the
mhm.
mushrooms. So I remember
Yes,
after the
yeah,
first time, I was like, I'm never going to do that again. That was cool.
yeah.
You know, And then I was like, well, like you take that time to let it
Yeah.
integrate
Right.
and you realize all of the things that you've learned. And I don't know, things just start to fall into
Yeah.
place.
Yeah.
Especially, well, when you have a good group. I also want to preface, because I know people are listening, like,
Oh, yes.
don't be in a, I highly do not recommend being in a bad headspace. You're feeling really
Mhm.
sad. You're feeling overwhelmed. Life is, chaotic around you. Go pop a bunch of mushrooms because you're going to have a really bad time, and it can be dangerous, mentally and physically, because,
Yeah.
like you need to know what you're doing. You need to have a good facilitator around if you don't know what you're doing, Um, I highly recommend just having somebody close by anyhow,
Yeah.
just to so but it's like with any medicine, if you use it irresponsibly, you're going to get some bad
Yeah.
results, right?
Yeah.
So,
Any tool, right? Any tool can be used
yeah.
to create, heal, or destroy, or kill. It just depends on the person.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up because the ceremony I went to, I would recommend to anyone, the people who hold the space and the facilitator. I mean, I know they talk about holding space, like energetically holding space, but their space itself, the grounds in which the retreat was held, is those people were phenomenal. The facilitator was phenomenal, and they create
Awesome.
set and settings, everything. And this is one that I'd plug for anybody. But
Nice.
yeah,
That's good to know.
um,
That is good to know.
yeah. I mean, it does go hand in hand with other healings too. It's an energetic healing, an energetic purge, which is why it always
Yeah.
comes up so naturally in conversations like this. I don't even.
Well, I because it does. It's interesting too when you were talking about with the raw pain. You're like, I burp and then my neck pops. That
Uh-huh.
is, it's when I am channeling spirit, when I'm really like
Hmm.
heavily into the flow and the energy's flowing, that I all of a sudden I'm belching. Like there's,
Uh-huh.
I cannot help it. It's just
I've
happening,
heard
and so
other people say that.
I'll be talking to somebody about something, very sensitive, like a sensitive topic, like somebody very special to them just recently passed away and they're very sad, and I'll be burping and I'm like, I am so sorry, you know?
I heard
But
another girl talk about that. She called it a confirmation burp. She was
yeah,
channeling on TikTok, and it came up. She's like, "Oh, confirmation burp, or whatever." But that's interesting.
yeah.
That's
And
those are
so
the only people who get it.
Well, and the gal I'm taking classes from now, she gets the same thing. She also
Uh-huh.
sweats, like
Uh-huh.
it's energy moving through you. And so
Exactly.
that's when
That's
you said that, I was like, oh, so like to me, that's proof that yeah, it's actually doing something. It's grounding you, it's
yes.
aligning you, and it's moving
Yes.
out that energy, and it's popping everything back into place and getting it, getting in line there. So it's really cool.
That's the weirdest thing, a neck pop, but it's every time. Every
Yeah.
time. Well,
Yeah.
I think you might be the longest interview I've had,
I
so
know.
I'm not going to take any more. I'm not going to take any more of your time.
I come with a warning. I talk a lot.
But no, it's great,
Talk
and I could
forever.
keep
Yeah,
going.
it's
We
been
didn't even
great.
get to aliens,
I
so but
know.
I can't start there. But maybe I'll have you back. Would you be open to that?
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect.
Absolutely. This has been
Well,
fantastic.
let's do this. If people want to contact you, what's your website again?
My website is a little bit long, but it's ourjourneyswithin.com.
Hmm.
And I can be reached. My email is Jessie Lee, JessieLee, at ourjourneyswithin.com. And there's
Journeys
a
Within.
calendar on there with my availability and everything. And if you have any questions, of course, shoot me an email and I'm more than happy to answer any questions. And
Okay.
yeah.
And those are your two preferred ways of contacting you. I'd like to also mention that you're also on TikTok if people want to follow you there. Is that just under
I
Jesse Lee?
I am on TikTok. My name on there is Jessie Lee, but my username is at Gaia Goddess.
Uh-huh.
So I can be
Okay.
found on TikTok, Gaia Goddess. Yeah. Oh, am I at Gaia Goddess or at underscore? Now I can't remember. Let me look real quick.
Okay. I don't
Um,
remember either.
yeah. Well, I've had to. That's Gaia Goddess is my typical handle on most places. So, oh, okay. I'm Gaia underscore Goddess on TikTok.
On
Yeah,
TikTok. Okay.
underscore. Hmm.
Okay. Yeah, that's where I keep
And
up with you.
that's the platform I use most.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to put you down as a possible repeat if you're open to that.
Yeah. Let's
All
get
right.
into the aliens the next time.
Yes, exactly. All
Well,
right.
and
Well,
I'm
thanks
going to
so much.
shoot you over a link as well uh, to my calendar, and then you and give it to your wife too. We'll schedule
Yeah,
some sessions. I would love to
for
show
sure.
you,
That'd be
like, have
awesome.
you experience what it's all
Yes.
about. Yeah.
Yes. Will do. All right. Well, Jesse, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Jake. It's
All
been
right.
a
It was great
pleasure.
to meet you.
You
Yep.
too. Have a good
All
one.
righty.
Bye bye.
You too.